What if we can positively impact society by reshaping the mindsets of young men? And while we're at it, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a man? My name is Dennis Meralda, a father, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a principal with over 2 decades of experience shaping the minds and characters of young men across the United States. If these questions resonate, if you're a young man looking to improve your life or a parent looking for tools to help your son become the best version of himself, the Building Men Podcast was created for you. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men Podcast. If you're a first-time listener, or welcome back if you've been here for a while. I'm excited today to talk to my man, Phill JANUSZEWSKI. Hopefully I got that correct. Phill is a tattooed covered Netflix baking show flopping high energy chemistry physics teaching professional speaker that is on a mission to create and spread happiness through education, motivation, and entertainment. I feel like you could pull that and put it up on your website as like a background, like the guy that comes on before the movie comes out. I think I nailed that, Phill. What do you think?
You did really good, man. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Dude, it's really good to see you here today. We talked on the phone. We've been trading messages and what have you. First time that we're meeting somewhat face to face. And I'm going to start with your experience growing up. So we all had our experience in education, and there were these little things along the way that happened to us that paved our path or blocked a piece of our path that led us to ultimately where we're going to go. So I'd love to learn about you as either a middle or a high school young man. Tell us a story about who you were that led you to what you're doing now.
No, thank you. It's great to be here. And Dennis, I fully believe in what you're doing. I appreciate your message and the conversations you're having. So thanks for creating that space. As far as growing up, man, yeah, that's a great question. Like something that shaped me, or that I know in middle school, I always had a lot of energy, and I would say, for lack of a better word, charisma, Dennis. I just kind of was my quirky self. Grew up in a really supportive home that liked humor, had a lot of love, focused on hard work. So as you know, in a public school education system, those things tend to work out pretty well when, your hard work ethic, but be friendly, kind, laugh off weird moments. So I really excelled in school, had a good time, was involved with like volleyball, played sports. So overall, I was a really happy kid. I was always definitely a little self-conscious, like about my weight. Always grew up a little thicker of a kid. And I remember always at a young man's age of like 12 or that, really wanting to feel strong and powerful. So that was always something in the back of my mind. I wanted to be active and just, I don't know, it was something probably about my ego, but I wanted to feel that way. So as I got into high school, luckily I really got into I had some really cool PE teachers, taught me how to get healthier in that. And that really built my final pillar in my self-confidence. But everything I did in school, I really enjoyed. I loved being around the people. I loved the teachers. I loved the classes. I loved learning. I loved that I was getting stronger and healthier too, and becoming more of the man I wanted to be. And I was super lucky to have so many good guides in my life, again, from my parents to the teachers I connected with. I think I also had a natural, I don't know, almost I really liked being around adults. I thought they were full of knowledge, and I liked connecting personally with my teachers. And it was just something I enjoyed. I'd like to kind of show off and tell them that I knew older music because my parents were really into music. And I look back now thinking I think I was definitely trying to show off a little bit and connect with them. But anyways, because of that and those connections, I was lucky to have a huge shift in my life, my high school year. Always growing up, I loved cooking and creating, and I thought for sure I was going to be classically trained and go to culinary school. Guidance from all of my adults in my life said, hey, then you got to get in the restaurant, start learning. So I did, and I figured out at 17 years old that, gosh, I hated it as a job. I just loved doing it for my family and at home, but not as a career. So I was so grateful and lucky to have a chemistry teacher named Mr. B, who I felt comfortable telling this to. And I told him, man, everything I thought I wanted to do in my future is kind of crumbling. I realize I just, this isn't for me. And he said, well, that's okay. Well, we could figure something else out. And he knew me probably better than I knew myself. He said, you really seem to love school and have a lot of energy. And I said, yep. He says, you really seem to love like my science class and all the science classes you've taken. I said, yep. He says, well, have you ever thought about being a science teacher? You could be in this system for like the rest of your career if you wanted to. And that was it. That was the switch. I went immediately to my guidance counselor, planned out my life. And by 22, I was student teaching, and I've been at the same school for 19 years now, teaching chemistry and physics. So when you talk about pivotal moments, I would say my health was a big turning point, and then also just my career and realizing that I love to teach and give to others.
To learn more about our programs, including one-on-one mentorship coaching, the foundation, our Building Men online group community for young men, or to bring a Building Men experience to your school, check out our website, buildingmen.io, or click the links in the bio. Now, back to the show. Love that. So a couple points I want to jump into. First, when you were connecting with your teachers around music, what was it that you were like, oh, this is the music that I know that you know? What was that?
Yeah, it was good. I grew up with everything from electric blues to classic Motown. Just every Saturday when we were cleaning the house, my parents had music on. My parents loved everything: Led Zeppelin, Deep
Oh, yeah.
Purple, Moody Blues. So I would just, when I'd have teachers that were more closer to my parents' age, I would kind of try to drop that to connect with them. And I really don't know why. And Dennis, full disclosure, I am an attention-seeking human. Like, I know that I like attention, and I always have. And that's worked to my advantage in some places and not in others. But I don't know. It was just something that I was proud to like know throwbacks for my age and then connect at that level. And I think in some weird way, it was my way of like expressing my love to them. Like I appreciated them and wanted to connect on a more personal level. But yeah, I couldn't tell you back then when I was 14 years old why I was trying to make those connections back then. But now I look back and I wanted their approval. I wanted their acceptance. I wanted to let them know that I connected with them more than just the class.
So your kids that you're teaching right now or connecting to right now, I know as a father of three, and I work in the education system on the periphery right now, but I talk to the kids now, and I remember hearing it from the generation above about, well, your music today isn't as good as our music, and I find myself saying the same things. I truly believe it, though. I'm not into the auto tune type things, but
Yes.
I connected with that. So you mentioned the teacher who took that moment to pull you in and to talk to you, and that really inspired you. One, I believe that there are these mentors, educators, teachers in our life that see things in us that we're unable to see in ourselves and carry things for us until we're able to carry them for ourselves. So this teacher was able to do that for you, and what a gift he gave you. When you think about, if you weren't in his class, if you were in Mrs. Crabapple's class instead of his class, how your life could have been different. That's one thing I think about. And then two, today when we record this, the episode will drop in the March timeframe, but we record this, it's January 15th, it's Martin Luther King Day, right? So I also started to think about this guy, this teacher you had was a mentor for you. This science teacher was a mentor. Who else in your life was a mentor? It could be a family member, it could be a coach, it could be like a Martin Luther King type person. Was there anyone else that you would identify like this guy or this gal by watching them, looking at what they were doing, I wanted to do the same type of thing?
Yeah, I feel like I always was super tight with my family. So as far as like looking at other people in the world and idolizing, I was always a strange cat, I guess. Like I didn't want to be Michael Jordan, even though he was amazing. And Dennis, I got to grow up in that era.
Right, you're in
That's
Chicago at that time.
And I know, man, that's just what a childhood. I got to see so many championships. But I guess I really looked up to people and enjoyed, but I don't know. I always kind of had my own path. However, I was super close with my grandfather, and he taught me so much. And he was a cynic for sure, but he was very real and honest with me at a young age about how important it is how to take care of your money, take care of your family, be responsible. I remember he was so upset when I told him that I wanted to be a school teacher. He said, "You're throwing away so much money. Go into computers. Just make a killing and never look back." And I remember, luckily at 17, I was confident enough to be like, no, I think this is my calling. I think I'm going to go this route, Papa. But he bought me Money Magazine subscription, which isn't in print anymore, at 16 years old. So I remember just growing up and being really tight with my mother, father, and my grandparents. And I think they demonstrated a lot of values that I wanted, and I still show as a father, as a husband. There was a lot of teamwork, a lot of love. There was a lot of open communication, Dennis, sometimes harsh communication, tough conversations. But I think that was really good because we didn't live in a passive aggressive environment. So, without rambling too much, sorry, Dennis, I would say that my grandfather was just someone that I really looked up to in a lot of ways. And now he's passed many years ago. And now that I'm a grown man at 40, I realize a lot of the insecurities and flaws he had as a human and the closed-mindedness on some people. But I think he only knew what he knew. You know, he made a great
Right.
life for himself, but what he could teach me, I think I've taken to heart and really applied so much of my life to.
I appreciate that, Phil. And I connect with it in that I had the same conversation with my father, not the good relationship that you had with your grandfather. My relationship with my father was more traumatic, uh, troublesome type of relationship. But when I told him that I was going into the field of education, he said, "You're going to live below the poverty line if you want to have a family." That was his pep talk to me. And I was more in the mindset like, you know what? To hell with you. I'm doing something that I love. So
Mhm.
when you decided to go into teaching, was it, did you feel drawn towards the science aspect of it? Did you love the like the scientific method? Did you really get into that, or did you love teaching and you're like, oh, let me figure out what part of teaching? I was more in the latter. To me, I was like, I wanted to teach. I didn't know what I wanted to teach, where I wanted to teach, what grade levels. I want to be a teacher in some capacity. How was it like for you?
Yeah, that's actually really refreshing to hear you ask that and say that, because I would say number one, my reason for teaching is I love to connect with humans and I love to be there and part of that energy. So, my number one reason for teaching is to connect with humans. Now, I happen to love science and geek out on science, but my number one thing is I'm a super extreme extrovert. I love to be around people and my number one goal as an educator is actually to just be a role model to the kids, to have them think bigger, have them realize that there are adults out there. I'm here to support you, love you, and meet you where you are, but also help you get to that next level. And while we're here, we're also going to learn a bunch of cool science. Hopefully, you'll come along for the ride. So, science was the no-brainer for me. Science and math were always my favorite, like traditional subjects, but I really do feel like I went in number one just because of the human connection. And I liked older kids. So I always knew like high school was for me. I did junior high for a semester in my senior year of high school as like an intern teacher. You could do a program. And day one, I knew like immediately sixth graders, just it wasn't my vibe. It was just an awkward time in their life. You know, do I wear deodorant? Do I like girls or boys? It was an
the
awkward
the
moment.
the the perpetual boner in language
Yeah.
arts class. Like, what do I? How do I cover myself up with my notebook? Like, absolutely.
So I just knew like, oh, that's just I wanted to be more of like a life coach, and like I wanted to talk about, hey, what do we do now when we get to 18, 19 years old? What are you going to do
Right.
next? So that was just my calling. And honestly, when COVID came around and that was taken away, that connection piece, and I was just looking on a screen, I mean, I really thought about if this is going to go on super long, like I'm out. I can't teach like this. I need to be with humans. So I'm glad we got back into it. But absolutely, I'm there for the humans first, and then I also happen to really like the
Right.
this subject.
If I were to go back, Phil, I would teach science 100%, especially I did education and sociology, which I absolutely love studying groups, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. But I would go back and teach science. Recently, I've really geeked out on science.
Mm.
And one guy that has just been the guy for me is Dr. Andrew Huberman. I absolutely love the way that he makes really complex concepts approachable and come to life.
Mm.
And a couple things that I've learned, just the importance of grounding yourself with your breath, like how much your breath impacts everything. And so when I work with young men now, we talk about breathing, and I never learned about that. Something I, especially as a student athlete, wish that I learned the importance of understanding your breath. And then the other thing that I've learned from him was the importance of understanding mindset. And it loosely related to science, but he talks a lot about, like, say, Carol Dweck
Yeah.
with, that idea of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and gets into the science behind it, especially like the neural pathways in our brain. So pick out, it could be anything. And this is a really big question, take it to however you will. Something in science right now that you've learned, or when you talk to your kids in your classroom, learning this for them is like a light bulb going on in their head. They're like, oh my God, this is absolutely unbelievable, especially high school young men. Something that you could tell us right now that, like, based on science, this is something, if you start doing this thing now, it could totally change your life.
That's a great question. Actually, I've really dived and dove deep into positive psychology the last couple of years, and I'm trying to bring that to the classroom. So I try to teach my students here and there about finding their happiness and flourishing more, and that the research shows that, like, making money isn't what makes you happy, but being happy is makes you more likely to be more successful and make money. I think a lot of them like to hear that. The area that I teach in is a mix of incomes for sure, but there's a lot of people that are doing well, considered upper middle class. And I think that a lot of them, these students, have the pressure that they want to continue to maintain that lifestyle, if not go even nicer, right? I mean, it's human nature to want more and more. But so we talk about that. Like, you already are living pretty darn good, and uh, how do we maintain that? And a lot of that is, can we find a way to flourish more, be happier and healthier, and from there, we're more likely to be successful. So we do little exercises here and there and try to process that. But I think that's one of the most important things. Learning science is valuable, and to be able to look at information, pick through it, understand it, question it, is an important skill to be a critical thinker. But I think one of the most important things for students right now is just to get that motivation and that intrinsic push forward so that they can be scrappy. Because I think career paths are going to look so different for them than it was for me. You went into a job, and I was on the cusp of that changing already. But like for me, I've been 19 years as a public educator. I think they're going to job a lot more, and they're going to need to be scrappy and a lifelong learner. So that's what I try to encourage them to be curious, to find what makes you happy and fill you up, so you have the energy to be resilient when things are consistently changing.
Awesome. I definitely want to get into the idea of happiness and positivity. But before we do, a couple questions about the current state of education. First, Phill, what do you think is the biggest issue facing, especially young men in that late middle school, high school age range right now?
Hmm. For me, I think it's distraction. I think there is so much at our fingertips that we're missing out on important learning moments, micro connections, and opportunities to experience. And not entirely their fault. With the phone in your hand, any downtime, the brain, it makes sense to the brain. Yeah, watch the rest of this Netflix show really quick, instead of just sitting with yourself, thinking in your thoughts, connecting and communicating with other people. So I think these little micro connections that we're consistently missing on in general overall is one of our biggest challenges, hands down.
And when you think of the phone right now,
Mm.
what it's replaced in our lives, right? Just off the top of my head, I mean, it's replaced television, it's replaced having a handheld calendar, it's replaced having, like, even a camera. It's replaced just connections, like connectivity, like
Yes.
having there's so much time that kids are spending. I was in a school right before winter break, and I asked the kids, like, how much time do you think you're spending on your phone? What's your average screen time in a day? What's your guess, first and foremost? And their guess was around 3 hours on average. And this was about 100 kids, 100
Mhm.
boys I was talking to. their guess was about 3 hours. After we went through and we charted all the data, the average was 7 hours,
Yeah.
with the high being 14 hours on average over the course of a week. 14 hours. So the things that a phone is replacing right now, that's the world that they're living in. And you mentioned distraction, so I'm all about, the idea of the three. I call them the three thieves: resistance, distraction, and victimhood. Those are the three things that get in the way of a young man's success. Distraction is a huge piece of it, and what I'm looking for is who is the hero that's fighting against distraction. So if you know that distraction is a big thing that's impacting young men today, how do we combat that? What would you say if somebody's like, I'm distracted right now, what can I do?
That's a really great question. I think we need to give them healthy, as parents and systems, we need to set up proper boundaries to help them navigate that. So I think we're doing a poor job as a society. And I think when we look back in 20 years, giving a young adult like at 13 a smartphone, Dennis, I think will be like, here's a pack of cigarettes, kid.
Yep.
I really do. And I don't want to be negative about the phones because I use mine tons and it's an incredible tool. I mean, I can't run my businesses without it, but I would tell them that I think they need to start working on their awareness, their and it starts with being educated. So I do that a lot. We have a lot of frank conversations. I'm not yelling at them. I'm not making them feel bad, but I'm raising their awareness. I'll just say, hey guys, just so you know right now, as we all walked in, 25 out of 26 of you had your head down looking at your phone instead of talking to each other. Said, you do what you need to do, but I'm just letting you know, like, you're not connecting with people. Are
Right.
you aware that you weren't? And a couple of them will be like, oh yeah. So I think poking the bear a little bit and bringing it up consistently. I'll be up at notes and say, hey, just so you guys know, we're going through something new, but about 13 of you I can count off the top of my head right now are just buried in your phone. So if this is information you think it will be valuable for your success, then maybe it's time to put that away or find a way to turn that off so that you can focus in. So I think the redirect, just like we did with our toddlers, ooh, let's not try to touch the stove. Okay. Let's, I think that's my job. And I must admit, not to be pity party, but it's exhausting. I
Yeah.
just want to teach, but it's more important that they learn. And there's so many schools of thought and education on what to do with the distractions. I went to wellness the student mental wellness conference in Anaheim in August last semester. And we had Harvard professors talking and all of them. It's so funny. Their presentations weren't even on phones, but we were talking about students and all of them just said, and by the way, hands down, phones should just not be in school for the mental wellness of kids and for their success. Hands down, and they all started saying that. And I thought, oh, that's so funny. I went to a conference and basically it was an anti-phone conference that accidentally happened. So I really do think like my kids are 11 and 8, and they will not be getting a smartphone in junior high. And I'm working with my wife right now. She's in the business world. She doesn't quite see it like I do for young adults. But I told her, I think they should have like a flip phone in high school for if they like need to call for a ride. Otherwise, I think they don't need it till they're in college. Then they can figure out that, navigate that, and let their brain develop a little further. So we'll see how that goes. But I did not want to go on that tangent.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's such an
No,
over-talked topic, Dennis. But
it's
it is
not, but
crazy.
it's really important. And also the lesson that will come along with it is helping your kids understand and deal with negative peer pressure, because by setting the flip phone up for them, you're basically saying this is going to be really, really hard for you for the next couple of years of your life. You might be the only one in your entire grade, in your entire school, that doesn't have a smartphone. So it's also setting your kids up with like, you're really strong. Like going back to the Carol Dweck thing, you're
Yeah.
really strong. You're stronger than this is going to be hard for you.
Yeah.
And me and your mother, what we know about blah blah blah, but it's going to be an uphill battle. I commend you for that. You got to keep me in the loop and let me know how
Yeah.
that's going over the course of that journey. So you mentioned the technology piece and you using technology, using your phone for business, as do I. And I think one of the big things, Phill, is, are you serving the technology or is it serving you? right? Are you a slave to it? We've all done it where we get on and I'm going to post and I'm going to do something. And then all of a sudden something catches your eye and you look up and it's 45 minutes have gone by
True.
and you're like, I could have been at the gym. I could have been creating content. I could have been reaching out to clients. I could have been doing something to inspire. And you get sucked into that hole. I also think kids are starting to become more and more aware of it. I did an exercise with kids, high school kids recently, where I put up 25 or 26 different ideas or concepts around the classroom, and I gave each kid 3 stick-it notes. And some of the things were technology addiction, body image, fear of the future, family issues, drug and alcohol abuse, school, relationships, what have you. So things that are on their mind, things that are going on in the world and in society today. And they were allowed to spend 3 of these sticky notes on the things that are occupying more or the most of their mental space currently. And 3 of the top things, and we've touched on all of them, were for the boys was fear of the future and fear of failure, like looking weak. The other was body image, and the other one was technology addiction. So the kids are recognizing it's a thing now. They just don't know how they can get themselves out of it. The other thing you mentioned too was with our kids, the hot stove, and with our kids, when our kids are little, they get the immediate feedback. If I touch this, I get burned and it's hot and this really sucks. With technology, they don't get the negative feedback. They get that hit of, I like this. This made me feel good. I'm going to keep doing it. Then the burning part of the stove, that won't happen for 10, 15, 20 years, it's such an uphill battle for parents right now. So I'll step off the soapbox because I really would love to know the Phill JANUSZEWSKI school of positivity, confidence in the future. Like, you have an opportunity right now. You have, the funding behind you. You can create the space. What does a high school look like? What should a high school look like? What should we be doing? What is like, if you have an opportunity to build it how you would, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's still in person in a building. I think it is hybrid because I think that will serve students well. I think they'll need to have courses where they'll meet in person, but also do things digitally. I just think that so many people will work virtually or part-time. So I think we need to give them that real life experience, hands down. I think that it's definitely at the young age, even though phones are great tools, I just feel like they're not needed at the moment in the buildings, in the school. I really do, even though I get it. It's going to be such a huge tool for them. It's such a unique situation. And I think we need to have subjects still, but allow them more time to explore and not just we're still old school, where we give information, take it, and then spit it back to us. We're behind in that. But the new type of learning requires a natural desire to learn. And as you know, I mean, I'm a salesman every day for clients that don't want to buy my product. And I get it. That's that age. That's the rebellion. That's the why do I need this? So there's always going to be this friction no matter what. Some students like, I don't want to learn this. I just have to learn this. And even if you gave them the free reign to say, hey, explore anything in this area and let's come back together and now present together, which I think would be a beautiful way to learn. I would say more than half of my students would be like, I don't care. I'm not interested in it. So just tell me which thing you want me to learn. It'll be easier. So I wish I had a better answer for you, Dennis, but I don't actually know what's really best at this time. I think kids need social interaction. I think they need to take more risks, get more experiences, live through failures more socially. And from there, I think they'll build up more resilience and again, become that scrappy human that gets excited about challenges. But that takes time. That's uncomfortable. And I don't know how to build that in a school day. I really don't. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of what you said, I agree with. There's also a piece of, especially for boys, there's a lot of, where it's very antiquated in the way that we're educating our youth right now, where it's more in the industrial revolution time frame where it was like, okay,
Yeah.
sit in a line, sit up straight, walk, raise your hand. Where I do believe it's smaller class sizes are optimal. Again, that like I'm preaching to the choir there because that's great, but how are we going to go ahead and do that? I feel like more of an open setting is important. I think way more movement in school is important. Kids have recess until they're in middle school and then it's taken away. And middle school and high school kids need to move. They need to get out. They need to do things, and we take that away so they get an extra 9 minutes of, chemistry, which is important. But if the kids had an opportunity to move a little bit more, I think we should be doing more public speaking at an earlier age. I think they should be out of the school and experiencing things. Kids will go through high school, and I know I have my middle child, my daughter, is 16 years old. She's chasing the top GPA in the school right now. So I'm like, take some time to like stop and smell the roses here. She's so much like, I need to have the highest GPA. I need to get this. I need to get an AP honors. I need to. And I'm like, what are you enjoying what you're doing? And I'm the parent, Phil. I don't check my kids' grades at all. I have never, honest to God, I've never went on the the app to check what my kids'
Right.
grade point average is. And they're kids that they enjoy learning. They like what they're doing. But I don't do that. I don't talk to the kids' teachers unless they've already gone through and tried something and exhausted every conversation they could possibly have. And I started doing this when the kids were in elementary school, and the other parents were like, wait, you don't talk to the teacher? No, I let my kids deal with it unless they're like, Dad, I can't, I've gone through all this and I wasn't able to do it. It's not the norm to do that. Again, me going on and on here, but I also believe the science piece of real practical things, like why not teach our kids about the importance of just the like daily habits,
Yeah.
like stacking wins on a regular basis. These weren't things that I learned. I might have had a gym teacher who was like, you need to eat healthy and train, but it wasn't like the science behind when you're doing these things, the
Right.
importance of intentional discomfort. Like you're going to be talking to your kids about the flip phone. That's an intentionally uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
But when you go through those things, it builds the capacity. It's like something that I've learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, when, especially with kids, when they know that something is going to be really challenging for them, like this is going to be really hard for you to do, but you can do this. I believe in you. And they see that task through to fruition. It builds this, I guess the best way to say it is like a train track in their brain to where the next thing that's challenging, it's easier for them to see
Yeah.
it through. Conversely, if a kid has an opportunity to do something they know is hard and they give up, it almost develops this like break in the train tracks or chasm there that they are like, the next time something comes up, they're just like, I'm not the type of kid that does hard things. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's on a macro level, that's what I believe. So if I were to take it down now to a micro level, Phil, and you have an opportunity right now to pitch the local board of education, this is a class or this is a small curriculum. It could
Yeah.
be in science, it could be in lifestyle, whatever it is. What's a class that you think these kids should take this class in some time throughout their high school experience?
It's so funny you just asked that because I just did that a year ago and unfortunately didn't go through. I pitched a happiness course, uh, and the happiness course would do a deep dive into the science behind what allows people to flourish. It's one of the most popular classes at, the Harvards and Yales and that. And we would model it off of that. I got my education certification and I wanted to do that where it's a lot of self-reflection and it starts looking into what is making people happy, what is not, what's the science behind it. And then from there, we'll look into what are the things that make us happy. And Dennis, to go off what you just said, doing hard things and accomplishing them makes us happy. Overcoming obstacles and goals makes us happy. It makes us feel powerful, more confident, more bold to push forward and try new things. And I would love to churn out thousands of kids every year that know, you know what, there's a lot ahead of me that's unknown and that's in my way that I'm going to have to get through or around or above. But I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to do it one step of the way, and I've got a set of skills. I can reflect. I can set a goal. I can put things in motion daily that are going to slowly work, and I'm going to be patient enough to do it, and I'll figure it out. I wish so many kids left thinking that way, and I think that course, if that was allowed to do, I think it would be hard to have only one section. I think so many kids
Yep.
would be like, oh, I want that. First, they would want it, right, Dennis, because they think it sounds easy, right? But second of all, they would really like it because it's like, yeah, I'd love some time to just reflect on me and figure out how can I take better care of my life so that I can feel like I'm flourishing more and what is going to make me happy as opposed to just survive.
Not only the kids would be lining up for that class, I think the faculty members, other educators would be
Yes.
like, all right, Phill, teach me, let me know. So, all right, I'm in that class right now. Give me an example of an assignment that I'm going to be doing. What's a daily thing or whatever that I'm going to do in that happiness class?
Yeah, there's so many different pillars to flourishing for sure, but I think a big one that's super easy would be like gratitude, right? So start looking into the idea of every class period. We start looking into what are the things we're thankful for. Let's prime our brain into what we do have and then go from there. But after that, so much like time is a huge part of our happiness and flourishing. So I would do a complete time audit. Like, let's break down our 24-hour day. Let's look at what we do in the day and let's start thinking about the things that make us happy and the things that deplete us. Is there a way to declutter the things that either keep us neutral or deplete us? And can we put in things instead? And I think if you walk through with students, they start seeing their day and realizing, wow, I do have a lot of time. It's just how I'm choosing to use it. Once humans feel like they're in more control of their time and they don't feel like there's a time deficit, our happiness can shoot up dramatically. A lot of people feel like they're not in control of their life, but they just never take the time to take control of it. And I think that happiness course would be a great way to do that. And then I also think it would be fun, the servant leadership point of view to give to others. I think one of the final projects for the semester would be to learn some type of new trait about being happy. And then I want you as upperclassmen to go teach a freshman homeroom this, to try to plant more seeds and go through the motion of this is going to be hard. A lot of kids aren't going
Yep.
to care or want it, but you're going to plant a couple seeds and know you did a good thing, even though only 3 of them are going to take that to heart. But that's 3 people's lives you changed. So I geek out on that stuff. And too bad, I get it. Public school has a bunch of red tape. There's rules of who can teach what. That's for safety as well, but sometimes it holds us back as well.
Yep, agreed. And the whole pay it forward thing, Phill, is such a huge piece. And developmentally, once the kids are able to understand that when you're doing something kind for another human being, guess what? That feels really good too.
Mm.
And when I first started building men, I talked to the boys. This is going back to 2005. I talked to the boys about we talked about what does it mean to be a man in the world, but it also correlates to the idea of happiness because the boys thought, what does it mean to be a man? Bigger, faster, stronger. You gotta have the abs. You gotta be able to do this and that physically to dominate. It was about the number of girls you were sleeping with, the notches on the belt, and it was about how much money you were making or the accumulation of stuff. And to them, while that made a man, that also was what would make them happy. Right. And so once you could start poking holes in that and they could start to see the error in their thought process, I saw a lot of them, the light bulb went on in their heads. I might have had it wrong. So what can we do to help them on that right journey? You also talked, Phill, about infusing the idea of building confidence in that course with positivity. I know that's something that you travel around currently. So you're working as an educator in a high school, but you also have your side hustles around workshops with educators and with students around positivity and around confidence. One of the things that I get asked most from parents with their boys that I'm working with, one is like the idea of distraction. How can I help them put the phone down and get out of their own way? But then two, how do I help my son develop confidence? So if you were giving me advice, what can I tell parents right now? How can I help their boys develop a level of confidence moving forward?
Yeah, the number one way to develop confidence is through experience. So as a parent, I want to put my children into situations where they're stretching and growing. Great way to do that is community service together as a family in uncomfortable situations that, maybe they're not familiar with. They're going to work with strangers. They're going to work with people that have different situations than them. And by doing that, that could be anything from helping at a soup kitchen to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Feed My Starving Children, but you pack these bags together and then you ship them off to countries to help feed people who can't feed themselves. We've done that all the time with my kids, and they see the video of people struggling. Then they're working and packing rice and bags with strangers they don't know. And as you know, when you meet people that aren't from your family and you don't know them, everybody's got their weird quirks, including us. So what you were doing is I'm trying to callous the minds of my children by giving them experiences. And the more they do that, that could be at a local community church, that could be with the neighbors, whatever. But by pushing them into those uncomfortable situations that are still safe, you're going to slowly build up that confidence, because the more they experience, the more unique situations they've been in, the more people that are completely different than them they see and empathize with, all of a sudden they feel like they have a wider view of the world, and that allows that stress to drop and they become more confident in themselves. I am valuable. I can contribute. I don't know everything, so I'm going to listen. And that allows people to develop their confidence. And as parents, that's kind of our job, to help them get into situations like that.
And going back to the Carol Dweck thing, when we take the opportunity with our kids to attach their, like, how they feel about themselves, I am, and insert, I'm hardworking, I'm compassionate, I am powerful, instead of I am the best athlete, I am the smartest kid in the class. Because when we attach the identity label to what they're doing and they're unsuccessful, they feel like they're a failure, and then they're less likely to take risks in the future, and they're more likely to misrepresent the results on things. And this is from a recovering person who, one, did that as a kid. I attached everything just to the end result. If I didn't hit the home run, then I wasn't the best baseball player anymore. If I didn't get the A in the class, then I wasn't the smartest kid anymore. I did that with my own kids for a period of time, have since shifted, and now what I do is I focus a lot on, not did you get 100 in the class, it's how hard did you work to feel the success. Or if they did well in a sport, well, what was it? You hit 2 home runs in the game. What was it like? Why were you able to find that success? Well, you hit off the tee for 30 minutes a day. You went to the gym, you stretched, you ate well, you got enough sleep the night before. So we talk about the process rather than the product. And I know I'm preaching to the choir right there. Pausing right here, I want to respect your time, but I have to get into this whole the Netflix baking show thing. I mean, you talked about, you loved, the creativity, you loved cooking, but you didn't want to work in the restaurant business. You're like, all right, I can learn the science behind cooking and baking and things like that. And I'm scrolling through your Instagram feed, and there's a video of you, and you were creating some kind of a monster that had like goo coming out of it. Talk to us about that whole thing. I mean, that was fascinating for me to check out.
Oh yeah, man. Definitely one of those weird highlights in your life. You find
Yeah.
yourself in a situation, not a resume builder in any way, Dennis, but a hell of a story. So, uh, Netflix has a show called Nailed It. They give you an 8-hour professional cake, but you as an amateur baker have about 2 hours to make it. So you're supposed to be terrible. It's a comedy show.
Yeah.
So we started watching it during lockdown, the kids and I occasionally, and they're like, you do so good with, I really get into cake decorating. I really enjoy it. I like the challenge of it. And then you can eat it too. Win-win. But they said, you got to try out for it. You would do so well. And I said, I don't know. Thousands of people probably apply, guys. Like, I wouldn't get on. And then my son flipped it on me. And he said, you always tell us we're supposed to be out there, like taking
Wow.
healthy risks, putting ourselves out there. And I said, touche, touche, you're right. Okay. I'll schedule a day. I'll get all the video stuff ready, and I'll apply. So I applied, nothing for about a year, and then they randomly reached out to me and said, hey, would you jump on a phone call? And then after that, I went through a couple phone calls and interviews, and all of a sudden I found myself in LA on a cooking set getting to do this, and I had a blast. And I tell you what, Dennis, and I tell my kids this, like, I tried my hardest, because you could win 10 grand, and I was like, oh, daddy wants that 10 grand,
Yeah.
baby. I went against an NFL player and a really nice grandma, and I was trying my absolute best, and I ended up not winning. The grandmother won, and my kids were bummed. And I mean, definitely I was bummed too. I wanted to win 10 grand, but I had such a good time. And I'm almost glad that I didn't win for my kids, I think it was a really good message. I told them I tried my absolute hardest and I went there knowing I wanted to have a good time. I wanted to be supportive of the people I went against so that we got along, and that I was still hungry though to win. And in the end, I told him it still wasn't enough, but I gave it my all and I'm proud that I did. And I had such a good time, even though I didn't get the top dog trophy in that. And I'm hoping that that planted a seed for them that, yeah, you're not always going to win just because you tried your hardest. Sometimes someone's just going to be better than you and you're going to have to eat it. So I had, oh man, but you talk about me and attention, Dennis, putting 30 cameras on me cooking. I was in
Yeah.
heaven.
That is so cool. I love the story. I love that your son called you out on it too. It's
Yeah.
those little moments as parents where it's the lessons are caught and not taught. So if you're constantly telling your kid that and you're like, it's like the old commercial in the 80s with the kid using drugs. Well, I learned it by watching you, Dad. All
Yeah.
right. Well, you want to teach your kid about resiliency and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Well, sack up here and do it, which I think that's really cool that you did it. The other thing too, where the experience, Phill, was I'm sure it was tremendous. Watching the video, it looked like you were having an absolute blast. But here's something I talk about. I never thought about it in this way, but I remember growing up hearing stories from my father and my uncles about like the good old days. We talked about Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and all that stuff. But I remember hearing the stories about them playing sports growing up. I only heard the stories of the last minute jump shot
Yeah.
and striking out the batter to win the game and throwing the touchdown and carrying the cheerleader off on your shoulder at the end of the game. So in my mind, everything that generation went through, they told the stories of the success. I didn't hear the story of the error that caused the winning run to score, the time that they asked the girl out and she threw the drink in his face. I didn't hear those stories of not finding success. So for me, every time I met a challenging situation, I felt I was inadequate. Well, I'm not living up to what my father wants me to do and the previous generation wants me to do. So to go through and say, I gave it my all, it was more about the experience than it was. I mean, the 10 G's would be tremendous. But what you did is you taught your kid, like, I stepped outside of my comfort zone. I did something. I wasn't successful in the, traditional sense, but the success was going through the process. And listen, I did something that I didn't think I was going to do, and I challenged myself. So that experience right there, the learning for your kids and the kids that are in your classroom, dude, that is absolutely tremendous. That's why I wanted to bring that piece of it up, man. I really, really appreciate you sharing that story.
My
So the
pleasure.
last question that I always ask on the Building Men podcast is, somebody's listening right now. I mean, I'm sure they got a lot of value from this, got a lot of laughs from this, understands a lot more about not only the science education piece, but just positivity and confidence as well. And someone presses pause on the episode after this answer. And what I'm going to ask is, if somebody presses pause right now, there's one thing that they can do, just one thing. And by doing this one thing, it could really change the path that they're on in life. What's that one thing someone could do right now?
I would say dive into your daily schedule and be intentional about what you do every single day. Just write it down. What am I going to do? Think about the things that light you up in your life that make you feel good, feel happy, and make sure you're hitting on those every single day, even if it's 15 minutes. But by the time you go to bed then at night, you don't do the, oh man, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have done that. Instead, you said, oh, I hit most of the things that fill me up. It was a pretty damn good day. And once you take control of that, I think everything else, that structure starts, you build off that foundation and life gets happier and happier.
Should in my family is the S word, right? You should all over yourself, or you
Ah,
stepped and should. It's just it has such a negative connotation to it. So you replace that with I will. I
mhm.
will tomorrow. I will do this in the future. However that looks for you. So Phill, where can we find you? How do we get in touch with you? Where do we see this Netflix episode too?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Phill JANUSZEWSKI, so I'm on social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, actually helping the phone problem, Dennis. I'm contributing to the
Right,
phone
right.
addiction problem. But if you just search my name, Phill JANUSZEWSKI at the handle, you'll find me. I'm the Netflix show is a random Halloween episode. I think it's season 7. It's called Slime Time. Check it out. You can watch me totally biff it after a half-hour show. But Dennis, like you said, I'm glad you could notice. I was having a time of my life with that. So But yeah, I absolutely love to help individuals. I have a positive growth lounge, which is for educators, where we meet twice a month, and I help them coach them and be happier and healthier. So if you're a teacher listening right now, I'd love to connect and just, if I can bring value, absolutely. And then I'm also a motivational speaker for youth with my best bud Matt. So we love to build confidence in others. So that company is called M&P Presentation. So just reach out to me. I love to connect and meet new people. Dennis, that's how we got in touch,
Yeah.
from a fellow friend, and that I love meeting new people. So I'm very approachable. Reach out if you want to talk, or just, I don't know, connect in any way. But thanks for the opportunity, Dennis. I appreciate it, man.
You got it, my man. This is a really, really good time. Anything I could do to support your mission moving forward. I'm gonna manifest a time that we shake hands, meet in person, and then take turns up on the stage talking to people as well. If you're listening to the Building Men podcast, you got any value from this episode, please consider rating, reviewing, and more than anything, sharing this out with anyone that you think might get some value from this message. Appreciate everyone listening. Go one step further than you thought you could go. We will see you next time on Building Men. To learn more about our programs, including one-on-one mentorship coaching, the foundation, our Building Men online group community for young men, or to bring a Building Men experience to your school, check out our website, buildingmen.io, or click the links in the bio. Now, back to the show.